What if everything you've ever been taught about the cross was completely wrong? What if this ancient symbol, worn around millions of necks and displayed in countless churches, holds a secret so powerful that it could dissolve every problem you're facing right now? I'm not talking about religion as you know it. I'm talking about something far more radical, far more personal, and infinitely more transformative. For 2,000 years, humanity has gazed upon the cross with reverence, yet somehow missed the entire point. We've turned it into jewelry, built monuments to honor it, and sung hymns about it, all while remaining blind to the revolutionary truth it represents. Smith Wigglesworth, one of the most powerful spiritual teachers of the modern age, spent his life unveiling what this symbol truly means. And I can tell you right now, it has nothing to do with what you learned in Sunday school. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, here's what most people don't understand. The cross isn't something that happened to someone else 2 millennia ago. It's not a historical event frozen in time. The cross is happening inside your consciousness right at this very moment, whether you realize it or not. And when you finally grasp what this means, everything changes. Your health, your relationships, your finances, your entire experience of reality can shift in ways you never thought possible. Has this ever happened to you? You pray for a solution, you hope for a breakthrough, you wait for something outside yourself to rescue you from your circumstances, yet nothing fundamentally changes? That's because you've been approaching the cross from the outside looking in, when the real power has always been the other way around. The cross isn't out there. It's in here, woven into the very fabric of your being. Think about the structure of the cross for a moment. 2 beams intersecting, one vertical, one horizontal. Most people think this is just a shape, a design chosen by history. But Smith Wigglesworth revealed that these 2 beams represent something extraordinary about how consciousness itself operates. The vertical beam isn't pointing up to some distant heaven where God sits on a throne judging your every move. It's representing something far more intimate, far more immediate, far more accessible than that. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely revolutionize how you experience every challenge in your life. That vertical beam is your direct connection to what spiritual teachers call the I Am presence. Not a deity separate from you, not some external force you need to beg or bargain with, but the infinite consciousness that lives as your true self. This is the presence that existed before your body was born and will continue after it returns to dust. This is your direct line to infinite wisdom, infinite love, infinite supply. And here's where it gets fascinating. Most of us spend our entire lives living on the horizontal beam, never realizing there's a vertical dimension available to us at all. We're trying to solve problems with more problems, using limited human thinking to fix situations that limited human thinking created in the first place. We wonder why we keep hitting the same walls, facing the same patterns, cycling through the same frustrations year after year. But what happens when you discover how to live at the intersection, where the vertical meets the horizontal? What happens when you learn to access that divine connection while navigating your everyday human experience? Smith Wigglesworth proved through his own life and through countless others, he taught that this intersection is where miracles become natural, where healing flows effortlessly, where solutions appear that the human mind could never have conceived. The question isn't whether this power exists. The question is, are you ready to discover how to access it? Because what I'm about to share with you goes far beyond theory or philosophy. This is practical spiritual science, and when you understand how to apply it, now I want to go even deeper into this because understanding what that horizontal beam truly represents will change how you see every challenge in your life. This horizontal plane is where most of humanity spends 100% of their existence. It's the world of effects, the realm where problems seem incredibly real and urgent. Illness lives here. Financial struggle lives here. Broken relationships, anxiety, fear, limitation of every kind, all of it exists on this horizontal dimension of experience. If this kind of deep, transformative content speaks to your soul, then subscribe to the channel. I'm here bringing you teachings that go beyond surface-level spirituality, real principles that shift consciousness and change lives. I want you on this journey with me. Here's the fascinating part that most people never realize. When you're living exclusively on the horizontal beam, you're constantly trying to fix effects with more effects. You have a health problem, so you seek a medical solution. That's an effect trying to fix an effect. You have a money problem, so you work harder. Or look for better opportunities. Again, that's effect addressing effect. You have relationship conflict, so you try to change the other person's behavior or adjust your own reactions. Same pattern. Effect, effect, effect. And there's nothing inherently wrong with taking practical action. That's not what I'm saying. But what Smith Wigglesworth discovered is that when you operate only from this horizontal consciousness, you're working with incredibly limited power. You're using human effort to solve human problems, and human effort by itself can only produce human results. This is why people can work on themselves for years, decades even, reading every self-help book, attending every seminar, trying every technique, yet still find themselves facing the same core patterns over and over again. The circumstances might change, but the underlying experience remains stubbornly familiar. Has this been your journey too? You solve one problem only to have another appear. You overcome one obstacle only to face a bigger one? It's exhausting, isn't it? And it feels endless because you're trying to win a game whose rules guarantee you'll stay stuck. As long as you're fighting on the horizontal plane alone, you're fighting with limited weapons against problems that keep regenerating themselves from the same consciousness that created them in the first place. But here's where everything shifts. Remember that vertical beam, that connection to infinite consciousness, to the I am presence we talked about earlier. The intersection, that precise point where vertical meets horizontal, that's where genuine transformation becomes possible. Not improvement, not management, not coping. Transformation. This intersection is where divine consciousness penetrates human experience, where infinite wisdom meets finite circumstance, where the eternal touches the temporary. And when you learn to position yourself at this intersection, something remarkable happens. You stop fighting reality and start dissolving it through a completely different kind of power. Smith Wigglesworth understood this intersection better than almost anyone in modern history. He didn't teach people to work harder at fixing their problems. He taught them how to shift their consciousness to a place where problems lose their grip entirely. When you're standing at the intersection, you're no longer just a human being struggling against the world. You're operating from a dimension where divine intelligence flows through you, revealing solutions that the horizontal mind could never conceive. Write in the comments, I'm ready for the intersection, because what comes next reveals exactly how to position yourself there and access this transformative power in practical, tangible ways. So what actually happens at this intersection? This is where Smith Wigglesworth's teaching becomes almost revolutionary in its implications. He called it crucifixion, but not the way you've probably heard that word used before. This isn't about suffering or sacrifice in the traditional religious sense. This is about something far more intimate and far more liberating. At the intersection, you die. But it's not your body that dies. It's your false sense of self that has to be released. Think about the identity you've been carrying around your entire life. The one that says you're limited, vulnerable, separate from the source of all power and supply. The identity that believes you're at the mercy of circumstances, that external conditions determine your internal state, that your health, wealth, and happiness depend on factors outside your control. This is what Smith Wigglesworth called the merely human consciousness. And here's the hidden truth. Most spiritual teachings dance around but never quite say directly, this identity has to die for transformation to occur. Now, when I say die, I mean you have to withdraw your belief from it. You have to stop identifying with it. You have to recognize it as the costume you've been wearing rather than who you actually are underneath. This is the real crucifixion. The moment you nail that false self to the cross and let it expire. And I'll be honest with you, this isn't always comfortable. Your ego doesn't want to die. Your familiar sense of self will fight to maintain its position. It will create doubt, fear, distraction, every argument it can muster to keep you believing that you are this limited creature struggling through an indifferent universe. But when you persist, when you consciously choose to release that identity and rest in the vertical truth of your being, something absolutely extraordinary happens. What Smith Wigglesworth called resurrection begins. Your true self, which has been present all along but obscured by layers of false belief, emerges into your awareness. And this true self is nothing like the struggling human identity you've been carrying. This is Christ consciousness, which doesn't mean you become Jesus or adopt a particular religion. It means you awaken to the same realization that every great spiritual teacher throughout history has embodied. You are not a human being trying to become spiritual. You are a spiritual being temporarily experiencing human form. If this video expanded your understanding, even just a little, go ahead and hit that like button. It's a simple way to say, this mattered to me, and it helps this message reach others who are searching for exactly what you just found. Let that sink in for a moment. You are not struggling toward enlightenment. You are enlightenment temporarily wearing the disguise of limitation. This shift in identity isn't philosophical abstraction. It's intensely practical, and it changes your response to every single situation you encounter. When you know yourself as spiritual consciousness expressing through human form, rather than as human form trying to reach spiritual consciousness, your entire decision-making process transforms. You stop reacting from fear and start responding from wisdom. You stop defending the false self because you've recognized it was never real to begin with. This resurrection happens not once, but continuously, as you practice living from the intersection. Each time you catch yourself identifying with limitation and consciously choose to remember your true nature instead, you're participating in resurrection. Each time circumstances try to convince you that you're powerless, and you return to the awareness of infinite consciousness operating as you're demonstrating the power of the cross in real time. The impact of this practice on your daily experience becomes undeniable. Problems that once consumed you begin losing their emotional charge. Challenges that once felt overwhelming start appearing as opportunities to deepen your realization. Put down, I am ready to resurrect. Because understanding this intellectually is one thing, but experiencing it in your own consciousness requires a specific practice that reveals itself when you're truly ready to receive it. Now here's where Smith Wigglesworth's discoveries become absolutely game-changing for your everyday life. When you're operating from this resurrected consciousness, from the awareness of your true spiritual identity, something shifts in how you relate to problems. And this shift is so radical that most people struggle to believe it until they experience it themselves. Problems don't need to be solved anymore. They dissolve. There's a massive difference between those two approaches, and understanding this difference will save you years of unnecessary struggle. When you try to solve a problem, you're acknowledging its reality, wrestling with it, strategizing against it, fighting it on the horizontal plane where it appears to have power. But when you live from vertical truth, from the intersection where infinite consciousness meets human experience, you recognize that the problem never had the substance you were giving it. Illness doesn't need healing in the traditional sense. It disappears when exposed to the light of truth about who you really are. Financial lack doesn't need to be filled through human effort alone. It's revealed as an illusion that existed only because you believed you were separate from infinite supply. This sounds too simple, I know. Your mind is probably objecting right now, saying, but my problems are real. I can see them, feel them, experience their consequences. And yes, on the horizontal plane, they certainly appear real and produce real effects. But Smith Wigglesworth understood something most people miss. The appearance of reality and actual reality are not the same thing. When you're identified with the false self, problems seem solid and permanent. When you shift to your true identity, you see through them to what's actually operating behind the scenes of your experience. So how do you actually do this? How do you move from intellectual understanding to practical application? Here's the technique that changes everything. The moment any problem appears in your awareness, any fear, any limitation, any challenge, you pause. Just pause. Don't immediately react. Don't jump into problem-solving mode. Don't start the familiar mental spiral of worry and strategy. Instead, you remember the cross. You remember that structure we've been talking about. You consciously recognize that what you're seeing exists only on the Horizontal beam in the world of effects. Then you make a deliberate shift. You turn your attention to the vertical beam, to that I am presence within you. And here's what most people get wrong. You don't beg, you don't plead, you don't try to convince God to help you or fix your situation. That's still horizontal consciousness wearing spiritual clothing. Instead, you simply rest. You rest in the awareness that God is present, that infinite consciousness is here, that the power that created galaxies is operating as your very being right now in this moment. You don't need to make anything happen. You just need to stop interfering with what's already true. As you rest in this awareness, something fascinating occurs. The problem begins losing its grip on you. Its emotional charge starts draining away. Why? Because you've stopped feeding it. Problems maintain their power over you only through your belief in their reality, your emotional investment in them, your identification with them as your personal burden. When you withdraw that feeding mechanism, when you stop energizing the problem with your consciousness, it has nowhere to draw power from. It's like unplugging a machine. The machine doesn't need to be destroyed. It simply stops functioning when the power source is removed. Write in the comments, I choose the vertical, because this practice becomes easier the more you consciously choose it. And there's a deeper layer to this technique that reveals how to handle even the most persistent challenges in your life. Now let me share something that brings all of this from theory into tangible reality. Margaret had been living with chronic pain for years. Not occasional discomfort, debilitating pain that controlled her entire existence. She had exhausted the conventional route. Specialists, medications, physical therapy, alternative treatments. She'd even tried positive thinking, affirmations, visualization, all the popular mindset techniques. And nothing fundamentally changed. Why? Because all of those approaches, no matter how well-intentioned, were operating exclusively on the horizontal plane. She was trying to fix an effect with more effects, using body-based solutions for what she believed was a body-based problem. When Margaret encountered Smith Wigglesworth's teaching about the cross, something clicked in her awareness. She realized she had been fighting her body, battling the pain, resisting reality. But fighting is horizontal consciousness. It keeps you locked in the very struggle you're trying to escape. So she began a completely different practice. Every time the pain appeared, instead of immediately reaching for relief or sinking into despair, she would pause and consciously crucify her belief that she was a body vulnerable to pain, not denying the sensation, but questioning the identity that claimed ownership of it. She would turn to the vertical truth. I am infinite consciousness temporarily expressing through this form. Pain is appearing on the horizontal plane of effects, but it has no power over what I truly am. This wasn't a magic spell. It wasn't even particularly comforting at first. Her mind resisted. The pain didn't instantly vanish, but she persisted. 3 weeks into consistent practice, she noticed the pain episodes were shorter, less intense. Something was shifting beneath the surface of her experience. Within 2 months, the pain stopped completely. Her doctors couldn't explain it. She didn't need them to. She had discovered the hidden truth that healing doesn't correct the body. It corrects consciousness. When consciousness shifts, the body reflects that shift. Then there's Thomas. His story reveals how this principle works with financial challenges. Thomas was drowning in debt. His business was failing. The pressure was crushing him. And like so many people facing financial crisis, he prayed. He prayed constantly, desperately, asking God to send money, to save his business, to rescue him from circumstances. But here's the revelation he eventually had. He was praying from the horizontal plane. He was treating God like a cosmic vending machine, begging for effects to change while maintaining the consciousness that created the lack in the first place. When Thomas understood the cross, his entire approach transformed. He stopped asking for things. Instead, he began the practice of crucifying his belief in lack itself. He recognized that his financial situation was an effect, not a cause. The real cause was his consciousness of separation from infinite supply. So every morning, he would consciously die to the identity that believed it was limited, vulnerable, subject to economic conditions beyond its control. He would rest in the vertical truth. Infinite supply is the nature of divine consciousness, and divine consciousness is my true identity. This wasn't denial. He didn't ignore his bank statements or pretend the debt didn't exist, but he stopped treating those horizontal facts as ultimate reality. Within 6 weeks, 3 opportunities appeared that he never could have predicted or manufactured through human effort alone. Not because he manipulated the universe or used some secret formula, but because his consciousness had shifted. When you stop believing in lack, when you withdraw your power from that illusion, the universe has space to express the abundance that's always been trying to reach you. Put down, my consciousness is shifting, because these aren't isolated miracles reserved for special people. And understanding why these transformations happen reveals something profound about how reality itself responds to your state of being. What makes these transformations even more profound is understanding that they work in every area of human experience, including the places where we feel most vulnerable. Rachel's journey demonstrates this beautifully. 3 failed marriages, each one following the same devastating pattern: hope turning to disappointment, connection dissolving into distance, intimacy transforming into betrayal. By the time she encountered this teaching, Rachel was convinced something was fundamentally broken in her. She believed she was cursed when it came to love, that happiness in relationships was possible for others but somehow eternally out of reach for her. The revelation she discovered through Smith Wigglesworth's teaching about the cross completely reframed her understanding. She wasn't cursed. She was living from what you might call a crucified consciousness, but in the wrong way. She had crucified her sense of worthiness, her belief in her own completeness, her recognition of love as her true nature. She was operating from the belief that love was outside herself, something others could give or withhold, something she needed to earn or deserve or desperately chase. This belief on the horizontal plane was creating her painful experiences over and over again. So Rachel began a radically different practice. She started crucifying that false identity, that sense of herself as incomplete, unlovable, broken. Every day she would rest in the vertical truth. I am love itself. Love is not something I need to find or earn or beg for. It is what I am. This was not affirmation in the traditional sense. She wasn't trying to convince herself of something she didn't believe. She was recognizing a truth that had always been present, but obscured by layers of false belief. After 8 months of this practice, she met David. But more importantly, she met him as a whole person, not a desperate one. Their relationship thrived because it wasn't built on need, but on the overflow of 2 people who had discovered their completeness within themselves. Now, Smith Wigglesworth taught something that takes this even deeper, something he called impersonalization. This concept might sound abstract at first, but it's one of the most liberating practices you can adopt. Impersonalization means recognizing that nothing appearing on the horizontal plane is actually personal to you. When illness appears in your body, it's not your illness. It's simply illness appearing as an impersonal belief in separation from wholeness. When lack appears in your finances, it's not your poverty. It's the universal belief in limitation expressing itself through your experience. When conflict appears in your relationships, it's not really about you or the other person. It's the impersonal belief in separation, trying to maintain its grip. Can you feel how this shifts the entire dynamic? When you impersonalize the problem, you stop taking it personally. And when you stop taking it personally, you stop feeding it with emotional reactivity. Most people crucify themselves on the horizontal plane by making everything intensely personal. They ask, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Why am I being punished? These questions keep you trapped in victim consciousness, which is just another form of the false self trying to assert its reality. Impersonalization lifts you above the battlefield. It allows you to see that what appears as your unique, personal problem is actually just an impersonal suggestion that you're separate from the infinite source of all good. And suggestions, no matter how convincing they appear, have no power when you recognize them for what they are. Write in the comments, I release the personal. Because this practice of impersonalization opens the door to an even more powerful technique that Smith Wigglesworth used to maintain his awareness of truth moment by moment throughout his daily life. Now let me reveal something that completely transforms how you practice everything we've been discussing. The cross exists only in the present moment, not in your memories of the past, not in your projections of the future, but right here, right now. That vertical beam we've been talking about, it connects you to what spiritual teachers call the eternal now, the only point in time where God actually exists, where infinite consciousness is accessible, where divine power operates. The horizontal beam, on the other hand, is where the illusion of time lives. Past and future exist only on that horizontal plane, creating the appearance of separation between who you were, who you are, and who you might become. Here's what most people miss. Every moment you bring your awareness fully into now, you activate the cross within your consciousness. You step out of the mental prison of yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's anxieties, and you position yourself at the intersection where transformation is always available. Think about it. When does worry exist? Only when your mind projects into the future. When does guilt exist? Only when your mind dwells in the past. But strip away the story, strip away the projection, and ask yourself, in this very moment, right now, what's actually here? You'll discover something remarkable. The pure present. Problems don't have the same substance. They exist in the narrative your mind constructs, not in the immediate reality of now. This isn't about mindfulness as a relaxation technique or a way to feel calmer. This is about recognizing that divine power operates exclusively in present moment awareness. You cannot access infinite consciousness while your attention is scattered across time. Smith Wigglesworth lived in this awareness, and it gave him access to miraculous outcomes that defied human logic. When you practice bringing yourself back to now again and again, gently returning from wherever your mind has wandered, you're doing something far more significant than managing stress. You're positioning yourself at the only point where the vertical truth can penetrate your horizontal experience. Building on this, there's another revelation that shifts everything about how you relate to abundance, prosperity, and provision. Smith Wigglesworth taught something that goes against almost everything you've been conditioned to believe about supply. God is not a supplier who gives you things. Read that again, because it's crucial. God is not up there deciding whether to give you what you need, or withholding blessings until you prove yourself worthy. God is supply itself. You're not separate from supply any more than a wave is separate from the ocean. The wave might look distinct, might appear to have its own identity, but it's made entirely of ocean. You might appear separate, but you're made entirely of divine consciousness. And divine consciousness is infinite supply, expressing itself as every form of good. This means you already live and move and have your being in infinite supply right now. Not tomorrow if you work hard enough. Not someday if you pray correctly. Right now. Lack appears only on the horizontal plane as an effect of your belief in separation from source. When you rest in the awareness that you already exist in supply, that you're swimming in an ocean of infinite provision, something shifts in your experience. Supply begins appearing not because you attracted it, or manifested it, or convinced God to give it to you, but because you stopped blocking it with your belief in lack. You removed the dam that was preventing the natural flow. Put down, I exist in supply now, because understanding this intellectually is just the beginning, and there's a practical challenge everyone faces when trying to live from this consciousness that we need to address directly and honestly. Now let's be completely honest about what happens when you actually start practicing this, because the reality is, you're going to face obstacles. The most common one, the demand for instant results. You practice the cross for a few days, maybe a week or two, and when your circumstances haven't dramatically transformed, doubt creeps in like fog. You think, this isn't working. Nothing's changing. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe this works for others, but not for me. I need you to understand something crucial here. Consciousness transformation is not always instantaneous, and there's a very good reason for that. You're not just learning a new technique. You're undoing years, sometimes decades, of deeply embedded belief in separation. You're crucifying patterns of thought that have been running automatically since childhood. This doesn't happen with a single decision or a weekend of practice. It takes consistent dedication, patient persistence, and a Willingness to trust the process even when you cannot yet see the evidence on the horizontal plane. Smith Wigglesworth himself spent years developing this consciousness before it became his natural state. The key insight is this: something is always happening in consciousness even when you can't see outer effects yet. Every time you choose the vertical over the horizontal, every time you crucify a false belief and rest in truth, you're shifting something fundamental. The outer world will catch up, but it follows consciousness. It doesn't lead it. Another challenge you'll definitely encounter is the temptation to mix this teaching with other methods. You practice the cross in the morning, then spend your afternoon using positive affirmations, then your evening worrying and planning human solutions, then back to spiritual practice the next day. This divided consciousness cancels out your work. You can't have one foot in truth and one foot in illusion. You can't crucify belief in limitation while simultaneously acting from limitation. You can't rest in infinite supply while hoarding and fearing lack. Now, this isn't about perfection. That's just another trap of the false self. It's about consistency of practice and catching yourself when you slip back into horizontal thinking. You'll also face people who think you're being irresponsible or living in denial. When you stop fighting circumstances and rest in consciousness, others interpret this as passivity. They don't understand you're working on a level invisible to human perception, the level where all change originates. You don't need to convince anyone or defend your practice. Your demonstration will speak for itself. When your life begins reflecting your shift in consciousness, people will ask what changed. Until then, practice quietly and let results be your validation. Here's the profound truth that ties everything together. From this moment forward, you have a choice. Not a choice you make once and forget about, but a choice that presents itself moment by moment, situation by situation, challenge by challenge. You can continue living on the horizontal plane, identifying with problems, fighting circumstances, hoping for external salvation, or you can embrace the way of the cross, dying daily to that false sense of separate self and rising into the awareness of who you truly are. Each time you choose the vertical over the horizontal, you strengthen truth in your consciousness. Each time you crucify limitation and rest in unlimited reality, you demonstrate the same power that created the universe. Write in the comments, "I choose truth daily," because this daily choice leads to something remarkable that happens when the practice becomes not something you do, but something you are. If you've made it this far, I want you to know something. You're not here by accident. The fact that you stayed through this entire journey tells me you're ready for a different kind of understanding, a deeper level of truth. And that means everything, because consciousness transformation requires that readiness. It requires someone willing to question everything they've been taught and step into a radically different way of being. This channel exists to share these kinds of revelations, the hidden teachings that actually work when you apply them, the spiritual principles that transform your lived experience, not just your philosophy. If this resonated with you, if something inside you recognized truth when you heard it, then subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to explore together, and I want you here for that journey. These aren't casual entertainment videos. They're tools for genuine transformation, and I take that seriously. Leave a comment right now saying, "This message was meant for me, so I know you were here, so I know this landed with someone who needed to hear it." Your comment also helps this video reach others who are searching for exactly what you just discovered. And if this content created value for you, hit that like button. It's a simple gesture, but it tells me you found something worth your time, and it helps build this community of people committed to living from truth rather than illusion. Before you go, there's a video right here that goes even deeper into how consciousness creates your reality. It's the perfect continuation of what we just covered. Click and continue with me over there, because the journey doesn't end here. It's only just beginning.